compassion, your mercy.
Hello and thanks for joining us for this week's film news. And we're starting with the 10th entry in a saga that started in the late 1960s with excellent makeup and has evolved to using state-of-the-art motion capture techniques. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is out this week. Let's take a look at hapless humans and their simian overlords and hear from the cast.
There are dangers beyond our village.
What a wonderful day!
These movies have always been the great mix of spectacle and truth, right? They're always about something. They're always reflecting ourselves in the times in which we live.
It's just a real story about relationship and about power and about what's good and what's wrong, and I think it's just an incredible world.
Help your father!
I think these films have fascinated us for so long because it's almost easier to examine ourselves through the eyes of another species. Apes are so similar to us and yet so different, and so when we see our experience reflected back at us through them, we can almost take a step back and look at ourselves with more clarity.
The elders did not tell us everything about this world. Nor bend for your king.
So it's the 10th Planet of the Apes movie. Are you a fan of this saga?
Oh, it absolutely depends on which one. The one with James Franco in 2011 was way, way better than I expected it to be. And the Tim Burton version was and is unwatchable. The original premise, returned to here, but tacking on a few centuries, is pretty unbeatable. There's been an evolutionary glitch, and apes are in charge, while humans are treated as, well, what we'd call subhumans. When I was 12 years old, Planet of the Apes was decisive in my lifelong aversion to giving away too much of a story because not everybody's seen it. I collected bubblegum cards, which came a few at a time. And to get all 50, you'd have to take your chances and chew a lot of tasteless bubblegum. I was in the back seat of my parents' car when time froze. You never knew what you'd get in one of these packages. And I got the final card, which means I knew the movie's devastating twist ending before I'd seen the 1968 movie. On some level, I'm still sulking, so no spoilers.
And the original movie with Charlton Heston was actually based on a book by a Frenchman called Pierre Boulle.
Why, I happen to have that book right here. It was a wonderful adaptation, and Boulle is a fascinating fellow with an enviable silver screen track record. Drawing on his own wartime experiences, he also wrote The Bridge on the River Kwai, which David Lean made into a now classic film. Interestingly, much as Ravel considered Bolero one of his minor musical compositions, Boulle ranked Planet of the Apes, published as Monkey Planet in the UK, as one of his lesser works. But it was an international bestseller and has spawned 55 years worth of movies and TV shows, with yet more big screen ventures planned. The tone of Boulle's philosophical sci-fi novel was satire. It really was satire, suggesting that humans aren't always as smart as we think we are, and that an over-reliance on technology can go horribly awry. In other words, 60 years after he wrote it, it couldn't be more contemporary.
Okay, well, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is out in in France this week, next to a feminist Western, which is called The Dead Don't Hurt. Viggo Mortensen's second film as a director is a take on the beauty and dangers of the American frontier. Tell us more.
Well, Mortensen wrote this and co-stars as Danish immigrant Holger Olsen, who charms fiercely independent French-Canadian Vivienne Lecoudi, played by Vicky Krieps. She's every bit as resourceful and capable as any man, but that doesn't mean it's a good idea for Holger to enlist to fight with the Union in the Civil War, leaving his soulmate to fend for herself in their remote isolated, did I mention it's remote, cabin in Nevada, where where there is the prospect of gentlemen callers who are not gentlemen.
Okay, well, let's take a look at the vistas and violence of The Dead Don't Hurt.
No sense being all alone on a night like this.
No different than any other. I am fine, Mr. Jeffries.
No, you most certainly are.
It makes no sense for you to be here now, Weston.
Is there gonna be a problem, Mr. Schiller?
I don't believe so, Alfred. I shouldn't have left.
I never wanted to be saved.
Now, however small the outpost, in the movies, there always seems to be room for an unhinged, violent bully, corrupt public officials, and mistreated immigrants. This movie made me more grateful than I already am that I don't live in the 1860s, although Viggo Mortensen could probably make almost any era bearable. I liked the strangely formal language in this very much. Even the conscienceless, violent bad apple arranges his words with lilting verbal dexterity. What is distinctive about the way the story is told is its leisurely rhythms. It's an absolutely sincere, well-made reminder that through most of human history, armed opportunists have had the upper hand and the people they subjugate had little recourse. If you can carve out a lusty and loving partnership based on mutual respect, doesn't matter what era you're living in. But as Vivian says when Holger announces he's going off to war, men are so stupid.
Okay, well, that's The Dead Don't Hurt. Definitely sounds interesting. And from next week, the Arts 24 team is relocating to the south of France for the Cannes Film Festival for 2 weeks. So much to look forward to, including the last film made by revolutionary French filmmaker Jean-LucGodard. It's in the sidebar devoted to heritage films, which is called Cannes Classics. Let's have a look now at scenarios which Godard shot the day before he died.
La dernière pensée d'Arthur avant de mourir fut consacrée au visage d'Odile. Dans le noir brouillard qui tombait sur lui, il aperçut cet oiseau fabuleux dont on parle dans les légendes indiennes et qui, paraît-il, vient au monde sans pattes, de sorte qu'il ne se pose jamais. Il dort dans les grands vents, plus haut que l'œil peut voir, et on ne le voit vraiment jamais, sauf quand il meurt. Il a les ailes transparentes, plus longues que celles d'un aigle, et quand elles sont refermées, l'oiseau tiendrait dans le creux d'une main.
So that was a taster of Godard's final film that he made the day before he died. Meanwhile, out in theatres this week is a filmic experiment that the festival showed last year by Jean-Luc Godard, and the title translates as Trailer of a Movie That Will Never Exist, and it was commissioned by a French fashion house.
That's right. The fashion house of Saint Laurent has branched out into commissioning medium-length short films. There was a literal riot in Cannes last year to get into the queer Western Pedro Almodovar made starring Ethan Hawke, and they had also asked Godard to make something. The iconoclastic creative genius made one of his trademark visual collages loosely centered on a woman activist, a Trotskyite, who was kicked out of the Communist Party. Godard narrated himself, and his voice from beyond the grave, as we just heard, is as distinctive as his pursuit of what cinema can achieve via the eyes of the viewer. Now, what I'm about to say is heresy, but pragmatic heresy, about how Godard is incredibly important in film history, but not essential viewing. What do I mean? Well, I'm asked what movies anybody should seek out. I have a personal list of directors and films I really do think everybody should see at least once. Some examples in the English language: The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, Francis Ford Coppola, North by Northwest, Alfred Hitchcock, Annie Hall, Woody Allen, Sunset Boulevard, Billy Wilder, and Chinatown, Roman Polanski.
Well, Godard, he really was an original voice in cinema, and he actually died by choice via assisted suicide in September 2022 when he was 91.
Yes, he died in Switzerland where he lived, and assisted suicide so far is not legal here in France. That same week, inspired by Godard's fully conscious gesture, French President Emmanuel Macron was inspired to form a committee to look into the possibilities for that subject here in France, and they've just issued their report. Now, when it comes to Jean-Luc Godard, I'm going to go ahead and say it's perfectly okay to just know his name, but not have watched any of his movies, or at least most of them. Breathless, made in 1960, is a lot of fun, and the 1968 documentary 1+1 about the Rolling Stones recording Sympathy for the Devil is a fascinating time capsule. But on not seeing Godard's films, we have Godard's own blessing. About 25 years ago, I heard him say at a press conference in Cannes that, quote, there are maybe 100,000 people in the entire world likely to understand what I'm doing, and that's fine with me.
Okay. Well, something completely different now to Jean-Luc Godard. Paris' Cinémathèque Française is celebrating the romantic comedy, and they've picked 20 rom-coms that they think are essential viewing, that many people will have seen who are watching. Do you have some favourites?
Well, more and more humorless essays are cropping up about how cisgender heterosexual romances have conditioned society long enough. I like to think that audiences of any sexual persuasion can enjoy watching the romantic advances and setbacks of attractive people. But if I had to choose from the 20 the Cinematheque has decided to single out, I'd recommend When Harry Met Sally, Working Girl, Sleepless in Seattle, and Pretty Woman. Fun fact, the screenwriter for Working Girl was inspired to write the script by visiting New York City in 1984 and seeing career women galore wearing sneakers while carrying their high heels. 40 years ago, believe it or not, the sight of women wearing comfortable shoes and then changing into heels for work was jarring. I'll tell you what I find jarring, that it now costs between $500 and $600 or euros for certain pairs of sneakers.
Okay, well, Lisa Nesselson, thank you so much. We'll be back in Cannes from next week for 2 weeks for all our special coverage from the Cannes Film Festival, so be sure to join us then. A reminder now that Paris' Cinémathèque Française is showing a host of romantic comedies until the 24th of May, and we're going to leave you with a glimpse of what's on show. Thanks for watching. See you next time.